Paul, I love your sidekick. Glad he's with us. And we are right at 7 o'clock, so I will call our meeting to order. Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Gerard,
Here.
Councilmember Husnick,
Here.
Councilmember Munson, Councilmember Byström, and
Here.
Mayor Bain.
Here,
Mayor Bain.
here. I'd invite everybody to join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Dan, if you could display the flag. If you'd like to shut off your video, you can do so on the bottom left of your Zoom tray. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Members of council, we have an agenda before you this evening. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda or any changes.
Mayor Bain, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
We have a motion from Councilmember Byström and a second from Councilmember Husnick. And Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye, agenda's approved. Next item on the agenda this evening is our open forum. Karen, do we have either anyone participating live for open forum or any written open forum comments that have been submitted?
Let me see here. I do not have anybody that looks like they want to participate in open forum online, and I didn't receive any emails, so I would say no.
Okay, very good, thank you. Next agenda item this evening is our consent agenda, and for your consideration, we have consent agenda items 6A through 6R. I will motion we approve the consent agenda with the exception of item 6L, the Forest Lake Mini Storage Development Agreement. I'd like to move that to the regular agenda. And I will,
I'll second that.
and
Excuse me, Mayor
Kathy,
Bain.
do you have an amendment? Go ahead.
Yes, I do. I'd like to pull item B, please.
Excellent. So I will amend my motion to be item 6B and 6L to the regular agenda. And
I'll amend my second to accommodate that.
excellent. And Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. Consent agenda items approved. And
Mayor Bain?
moving, go ahead.
I'd make a motion that we approve consent agenda item 6B.
I'll second.
Motion from Councilmember Husnick and a second from Councilmember Gerard. And Karen, could we get a roll call on item 6B?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Abstain.
and Mayor Bain.
Okay. Item approved. And next item on the agenda is item 6L, Forest Lake Mini Storage Development Agreement. I believe there's a minor adjustment that needs to be considered for this. Donovan, Patrick, I'm not sure who's taking us through this. Can somebody clarify? Karen, go
Mayor
ahead.
Bain, I asked to, when I sent the email, I asked to have it pulled because I had received it back from the applicant. And there was a note on one of the pages that Exhibit A, I sent out to council, Exhibit A, the property description needed an update. And so, because there wasn't time to get all that, I thought it would, a motion to update it with a motion to approve it with the contingency that it gets updated.
Very
Would be-
good.
would
If
work.
I could add to that one, yeah, I did receive the email from the applicant and my paper copy that'll insert this page has already been updated. with the correct legal description for the property.
So we have that within our walls tonight.
Yes, Mayor.
So would an appropriate motion be to motion to approve with the updated property description based on most recent application received?
Certainly.
So moved.
I'll second.
2 seconds.
And we'll take a second from Councilmember Gerard. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none. Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. And item approved. Moving on to our regular agenda item this evening, original item 7A, which is the Cable Commission 2021 budget review and approval. Dan and Paul, I know you've both been involved, and we've also got, well, Dan and Councilmember Gerard, I know you've both been involved, and we also have Paul Peterson from LATV joining us. Who would like to get us started? Dan, go ahead.
I asked Paul this exact thing this morning. I said, do you want me to kick it off or do you want me to tee it up? And he asked me to do so. So I will go ahead and just get it kicked off for this evening. Mayor, members of council, what you have before you is the Cable Commission 2021 budget. Council approval of this budget is a creature of the joint powers agreement that we have that established the Cable Commission. Both councils, the Columbus City Council and Forest Lake City Council, meet and review and approve the budget for the Cable Commission. Basically, the 21 budget for the Cable Commission is pretty much very similar to last year's budget. Just a couple of highlights. There was a slight reduction in this year's budget due to overall employee wages. They're utilizing less filmmakers, so there's a little bit of cost savings there. They added in 21 is an audit year for the group. I did put the wrong number in that memo. It actually should be about $5,000 for the audit. I included the services that they pay for their bookkeeping from Columbus and that $98.50. So that amount should be about $5,000. There is a small rent increase per the rental agreement that we have with the senior center. On their capital equipment, one major change in 21 is that there's no more. They have fully paid back the city of Forest Lake for all of the funds that we expensed for the equipment in council chambers. So they made their last payment in 20, so that is not on their 21 budget. They are also starting to build a fund within their PEG revenues for future replacement of city council equipment. One thing that they've done is they've put systems in Forest Lake and Columbus, and so to try to account for when those systems need replacement, like new servers or a new camera, they're starting to build a fund reserve within their PEG balance to account for those future expenses. So they're starting to put money into that account. One thing is that we found is that franchise fees have remained relatively flat year over year. If you recall, last year we thought that there's going to be a pretty significant reduction in 20 due to I believe it was the FCC ruling that came out last August. We found that the actuals were pretty close to 19, so those fees were pretty much flat, and those got projected forward. I do want to commend Paul and the Cable Commission for this year. They did put an additional $5,000 into their fund that they're using to pay for when we have to go back through and renegotiate our franchise fee agreement with the cable provider. They've been putting in $5,000 every year. This year, not only did they put in their original $5,000 that was envisioned for that, they put an additional $5,000 in last year. So that fund balance is starting to go pretty quickly. So I do want to commend them for making sure that they're taking care of that future expense. Other than that, the budget is pretty much very similar to last year. So the recommendation is approval of the 2020 Cable Commission budget. And I do have Paul here from LATV as well, just to sort of give just a quick summary of the activities that he's been engaged in 24 LATV.
And that's why we have Dan do it. So that was fantastic. I'm just kind of here to, if you guys have any questions, what we're doing, we're kind of working with what we're given in our situation at this moment with COVID. So we're presently working on videos to help businesses and get them through this time. The one that's coming out next is one we're doing for Best Defense Armory. We're also working on a restaurants through the holidays, what they can do, catering, if that's delivery, you know, whatever that is, a meal for one, a meal for 20. So we're just kind of asking, we reached out to as many restaurants as we could find and any help they can have. The video after that is going to be, the proposed title is the 12 Days of Wellness. And that's kind of how to get through this physically, spiritually, mentally, whatever it takes to stay positive with everything that's going on right now. So the general thing is just to help people get through, and any kind of thing we can do to help businesses survive the next few months is all it is. We did a ton of work with the schools this year, and we're going to keep doing that next year. I don't know what's going to happen right now. A lot of the extra activities all kind of went away, but part of our budget this year is I'm working on a partnership with Leela and the high school to help them kind of start their own film production services where they could stream their own stuff. So I put in for us to get new cameras at LATV for our productions, and we're going to take the remaining cameras we have, and those are more available for them to check out on longer periods of time. So they can, and I will go train in students and get them to be self-sufficient to stream whatever they want to do for production. So for schools, that's what we're doing. Right now we do, you know, we help them with videos for virtual things when they can't have audiences and concerts and things like that. We did a virtual homecoming this year, and that kind of stuff will just we're kind of playing it by ear as we go. What somebody calls me and they need some help, you know, promoting an event or showing an event, that's what we're there for. For the city, kind of the same thing. Met with Jamie today. We're working on some kind of a virtual holiday ceremony in it, as opposed to the tree lighting, because we don't want a ton of people there. So anything like that we can help put together and highlight stuff, that's what we're doing. I did meet with Scandia a couple of times over the last year, and they're possibly thinking of coming back in the joint powers, but we don't really know until we're kind of getting through what we're in right now before we dive back into that. So we're just kind of chugging along. I'm here. People call for help. I go try to help them. And that's kind of what we're doing.
Thank you, Paul.
If there's ever anybody has suggestions for things that would help, I am more than open. I know I'm not the smartest person in the room, so I will take suggestions from anybody. So.
Councilmember Gerard.
And just to add on the budget, for anyone who knows the chair of the Cable Commission, Diane, she can dot the i's and cross the t's, and you're not off a penny. So this budget's been well thought out. Had a lot of work done on it. Now, as the new year comes, I will no longer be on the Cable Commission, and Jeff from Columbus also did not run, so he will not be on the commission. So it'll be a little bit of turnover. Not a huge concern of mine with Diane at the helm.
I did email Diane 2 days ago and said she is not allowed to leave me ever. So.
We get you locked into that same contract, yeah.
Yes.
So I will echo Councilmember Gerard's thoughts on Diane's service on the Cable Commission, and yes, she does a terrific job. I do recognize that so Diane is all about programming and would love to see every penny be able to go to programming, and I know it pains her that we are spending money on an audit. So I'd like to just say thank you that we are continuing on the every other year audit. I do think it is use of public funds, and I think it is important, but I do recognize that is at conflict with using every spare dollar towards programming. So I'm happy to see that on there again for this upcoming year and part of that budget cycle. So Paul, the work you do continues to just be amazing. So you're a tremendous asset for the community. The veterans video that you recently did was fabulous. If people haven't seen it, go look at it. I think it's a great representation of what you can do in the community, and look forward to the business videos that you have coming up. Certainly whatever we can do to help highlight businesses and the services that they're trying to offer right now during this time, I think is just a tremendous asset. So thank you in advance for that work, and I'm looking forward to seeing them.
Absolutely,
Councilmember
my
Byström.
pleasure. Thank you for letting me hang out and continue.
ahead.
I would like to just, kind of echo what Councilmember Gerard and Mayor Bain both said, and just build on that a little bit. I have had an opportunity to work with Paul and his team in numerous occasions, and in his characteristically calm and confident way, when the rest of us are sort of panicking because it's now becoming virtual graduations, for example, whether it's for like high school or Leela. We just don't know how we're going to get this done, and it turns out absolutely beautiful. So I just have a wealth of gratitude for LATV and the fact that it's a part of this community. I agree with you, Mayor Bain. It's just an incredible asset here. Paul's willingness to step in and work with and guide students, through these processes. I mean, really maybe even kind of developing a passion in them. They don't necessarily know what pathway they're headed down, as they're in high school. But having these experiences, I think, points them in a direction. And so, and then again, completely in agreement about the businesses and, the support of the chamber and the businesses and restaurants and whatnot in the community. So I just want to extend my gratitude to Paul and his team and the great work that they do.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councilmember Husnick, and you are on mute, Sam.
Story of my life.
All of us.
I don't want to repeat what's already been said, except to say I do concur with it. And Paul, thanks for all of your hard work all this time. And we're getting a lot of bang for the buck. And I certainly appreciate that. And I think the citizens of this city appreciate it. So keep up the good work and thank you.
The cool part is I love doing it. So I'm actually just kind of having fun. So.
You mean we don't have to pay yet? No, I'm kidding.
Well,
yeah, you got to be careful how you put that.
I know. Okay, I'll take that back.
All right.
Horrible.
Okay.
Mayor Bain, I would make a motion to approve the 2021 Cable Commission budget as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Gerard and a second from Councilmember Byström. Any further discussion? I would just say, Paul, as this next year is evolving, keep us posted as whatever support we can provide. So thank you for being there for our community.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you all.
All right. Karen, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
and Mayor Bain.
Aye. Motion approved. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item this evening is, and we are actually moving away from that was our last regular agenda item of the evening. We have a number of discussion items, which is our more informal workshop format. So if anybody watching online, we are not expected to make any official council actions during these discussion items. These are workshop time for council that we have added onto the agenda this evening. So the first item is around the senior center update. Patrick, I think you're taking us through this.
Yeah, just a very quick update on the senior center. Jamie and I met with the senior center board probably 2 weeks ago now and discussed the immediate future of the senior center. And combine that with the recent pronouncements from the governor. The senior board agreed with the staff recommendation to close the senior center until further notice. That doesn't mean permanently. That just means we're going to take a break and reconvene probably in January to see where everything sits and what we should do. That should also give us some time to start working on how the center is going to operate in the future. But there was no real big discussion. Everybody was in agreement. I think it's a good thing to close it for now. And we'll see what the new year brings as far as COVID goes, but also we're really hopefully we can find a good program balance going into the future for the senior center. So just wanted to update you to make sure that was all, that you all knew what was going on. We are continuing to look at that and trying to figure out what we're going to do. But right now, we're going to take a break for a month or two and see where we go.
Not much else we can do.
It's the prudent thing to do for sure. Any questions for Patrick on that? All right. Moving on to our next discussion item this evening is the 2021 fee schedule update. Karen, are you taking us through this?
Yeah, I can take you through it. Attached to the packet is memo, and the memo basically summarizes everything that has changes. So you'll find the memo, and then you'll also find the fee schedule, which is actually an ordinance. As you follow through the ordinance, what I did is drew lines through those items that will be changing, and then also highlighted those changes and made the additions or changes that are going to appear. The summary in the memo shows everything, so you don't have to go down through the fee schedule. The only one that would be not solid at this point is the parks for Fenway, which I think still needs to. My understanding is, we can adopt the fee schedule as it is, revisit that later when we do have a better evaluation of what those fees will look like. So when you go down into the ordinance, you'll see just an X as a dollar value for those Fenway fields. But otherwise, there's not as many changes this year as there was last year. And I'm pretty sure everybody's got everything turned into me at this point.
Yes, we're still working, just a comment, we're still working on the Fenway and the athletic field charges. We're not ready for that. We will bring that back to council January, February of the new year.
Yeah, one of the big things I wanted to point out, and Jamie can probably comment on it later if she wants, is that in the parks section, there were fees added for resident versus non-resident, which I don't think we ever had before. It was just always one fee. But now it's been distinguished that some of those rentals, for example, the ice rink has a non-resident rate, ice rink rental, or the park shelter has a non-resident rental rate when we didn't have those before. So that's one of the bigger changes where we're distinguishing and trying to provide a better benefit for the residents versus non-residents coming in.
Yeah, and that's a fairly common structure with parks and recreation fees where you charge a resident one rate and the non-residents a different rate.
I have two questions on opposite ends of the fee schedule. One is the airport lease rates that are proposed. Have those been, were these previously scheduled and planned? And is this just us catching up the ordinance with what was planned? I could use just a little background on what those the updates on the lease per square footage.
I could address that. So yeah, those were approved. I believe it was in June or July. They approved the updated rates, and those were billed out for 20, and they always trail back by the fee schedule is always out of date. So that just syncs us up with the ordinance that was passed earlier this year.
And is this the official killing of the hated $280? I just can't let this moment pass. I mean, we're finally redlining it off, right?
It is officially redlined and off the fee schedule from this moment forward.
We're not passing it tonight, so let's not celebrate too early, but I just want to note the milestone that we are passing.
Actually, I mean, technically it's already been passed as part of that original ordinance. So yes,
Yeah.
I mean, you can celebrate that. So yeah, it is getting removed from the fee schedule. So will no longer exist on the fee schedule.
Excellent. The other item, and this is on the opposite end of the fee schedule, is the residential rate for the surface water, surface stormwater utility is moving to $48 per year. That was previously $40 a year, correct?
That's correct.
And I'm just curious, and point me to the conversation if this has already been discussed. How did we come up with 48? And given kind of the stress that fund is on, is 48 enough? Is this something where
Well, if,
55 is that a better number?
well, probably 60 is a better number, to be quite honest with you, but, well, a couple of things. First, when Ellers presented the 10-year plan, they did recommend a 10% increase of that, which would have been $4. Looking at the fund and looking at the fund balance and projecting out further, we think there's going to be needed a bit more than that. This is the first year. I didn't want to raise that too high. I want to see how this year performs as far as the revenues and expenditures go. Later on, we'll be talking about the budget and the shifting of some of the lake supported funding to this fund. So that also is something we need to take a look at, not only now, but we need a little more information, a little work on those fees. So it's really just a placeholder to balance the fund out and make it look better for a while and support the activities that are there.
I support the increase. We always get a lot of questions about this fee because it gets billed to every resident regardless of whether they have city water. And so the more information we can have out there and what those funds are used for, the better. And also I support the continued evaluation, given that we are trying to do some additional lake funding. And this is a great source of revenue for that, but we need to have the communication behind it. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to do that. And, you know, I was saving it for my report, but we're going to be interviewing that communications coordinator position in the next 2 weeks. So we should have some of that starting and doing a little better job on communications and structuring how we communicate to the public. So
that's good. Ryan, I think you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Just a quick add on that. There's a very nice description on the city's website on what the fee's used for. And I see that we have the 2018 projects that were all on there that bled into 19. You know, we could update some of that to include the 19, 20, and some of the stuff planned in 21. You know, some of the stuff that's new since what you see on the website is certainly you guys have now made good progress on pond cleaning projects, you know, so that's something to highlight there. But then just your crop agreement projects with the watershed districts that you've been doing, and then the increased maintenance that's been going on. You know, a lot of people that ask what this is about, you know, that might live out in the old township, but drive into downtown Forest Lake, might drive over 50, 60 culverts by the time they got there. And, you know, part of that is to repair those old CMP culverts. You know, one of the things that Public Works is doing, instead of replacing them with corrugated metal pipe, is replacing them with an RCP pipe with a reinforced concrete pipe. So it's going to last much longer and provide better strength. So a little more expensive up front, but lasts way longer than the old CMP standard that were put on the old days. So
thank you, Brian.
Highlight that on the website.
Yeah, getting that content updated would be great, because you're right, we've made a lot of changes to that overall program and what's sitting in there. I've hijacked this topic on two specific, very nit items, but other questions, Councilmember Byström, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I also was wondering about this surface water rate. It looks like it's about $2 quarterly. I too was, as I was looking at the budget update and seeing that some things are shifting there, and then looking at this update, I had the same question. Have we kind of done that math? If we're going to be kind of shifting some of those dollars that way, we certainly, you know, want to be sure that we have enough to offset whatever shifts are being made, and then some. So that was just my only question with this.
Yeah, we've done the initial math. There's going to be more math have to be done in the next few years to make sure that we cover the expenses, not only for lake expenses as it shifts over there, but pond cleaning and all the other maintenance that goes along with this. So there'll be more math next year as well. So.
Members of council, other questions related to overall fees? Councilmember Gerard.
Patrick, I believe on the sewer was going up, or I'm sorry, the water. I think Ellers was recommending 15, which was kind of staggering. I think we believe we settled for less than that. I think, as I recall, I can't remember where I found it, but I think you're looking at 10%. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
Ellers did recommend in their presentation a 15% in the water rate increase, and we'll talk about this on item D, the 10-year plan. I've issued a memo to you that basically says a 15% water increase for 2021 was proposed. We had a previous recommendation from a rate study of 7% for that, and Ellers then also looked at a 3% increase for the sewer fund. But our fee schedule indicates a 6% increase for that rate. We're suggesting kind of changing that just a little bit, not to have a 15% increase in the water, to have a 10% increase in the water, a 3% increase in the sewer rate, and then we've already talked about the surface water rate. The sewer fund is the best of those three funds. It's the most solid. It can take the most, take the less hit as far as that go. The water fund, we've come a long way from 2 years ago where we had the water study and we couldn't figure out how to finance, and the long-term outlook for the water fund was pretty poor. We were about ready to finish, stabilize that. We have a lot of construction ahead in the next 5 years and currently. So yeah, I would recommend a 10% water rate increase. If we want to have a further discussion on that, we can when we get to the 10-year financial plan and the 2021 budget. But that's 15%, I think, is a little bit aggressive on Eller's part. They're just looking at bottom line numbers, but I think that fund can afford less.
I also think the history on where rates have been is important. We took a tremendous spike knowing we were going to take a tremendous spike, but the thought was, and the communication with the community was, it's going to hurt in this year and it will be a smaller hurt. And I think this 10% this year just makes me a little bit, it's still a lot, but I think it's, I'm more comfortable with that if that, as long as it's leaving us in an okay place long term. And it sounds like that's
right. And that's what we're trying. And in coming years, we're going to try not to have such dramatic increases. We don't want to see those spikes you see when you look at a graph. We want a nice gradual curve to meet what our expenses are. Once we have the capital plan for the water fund in place, which we do, we expect that just to level out and to do operational increases small as possible for the next coming years. That's the goal.
Other questions on fee schedule or input at this point? Karen, next steps, does this come back to us for approval in our December meeting? Is that the plan?
Yes, that's my plan, is to, if this all looks fine and I don't foresee any changes, what I'm getting is that this is agreeable, then I would bring it back to the December 14 meeting for approval.
Yes, this will be a package with the rest of the budget. The fee schedule usually is packaged with the next year's budget and the levy, so it all coincides together and we make sure we're all on the same page.
Very good. Thank you. Next agenda item this evening, 2021 city meeting date calendar. That means we are getting to the end of the year.
It is. That's me too. So what I attached here is the annual meeting calendar that shows all the meetings for the council, boards, and commissions. And then there's also a chart that comes with it, explains what those symbols mean, which meetings they are referring to, and then the times that those meetings happen. Basically, it's just shifting, from one year to the next. There's a couple of things that change, the holidays, and then usually as we get towards the end of the year, Planning Commission usually only has one meeting in November and December, and then of course those meetings are always subject to change. Council meetings towards the end, that last meeting of the year tends to get canceled because it's right at Christmas time. But overall, the meetings are pretty much the same schedule as they were last year.
council members, as you have met with your individual boards and commissions, any schedule feedback that we should be considering for this? I would just note, as it relates to EDA, I would expect for 2021 that fourth EDA or the fourth Monday, which is the second EDA Monday of the month, that would be the downtown committee for probably most of 2021, but that is a subcommittee of the EDA, and I'm fine with it being calendared as an EDA meeting.
You know what, I think
Oh, and you noted on here, you do have it on here. It's
downtown committee workshop is on the second Monday. That
Oh,
should be the one, shouldn't it?
that should be the fourth Monday.
Yeah, I'll make that change.
The only feedback I have.
What?
Any other feedback for Karen?
No, keep in mind those meetings in January and February, the workshop meetings that are usually held on a Monday, because there's some holidays there, will get shifted to Tuesday. But that's really the only significant things in terms of Monday nights. And then we do still have we do still show that Human Rights Commission on the calendar. So just wanted to remind you that.
As we should. Yep, we should.
Yeah, and then also for boards and commissions, I know the Planning Commission, there are a couple members that are up in January. I don't know what their intentions are. No. Eric Langness made an announcement that he will be stepping off the board, so there is definitely there's a seat open there, along with Michael Black's seat from last year that didn't get filled. So Planning Commission has 2 seats open, possibly more, depending on what the 2 members decide to do that their terms are ending. Trying to think who else has members of it. So I think those are the only ones that I noted. So Planning Commission really has a need to get some seats filled.
Noted. Anything else related to the calendar? Not hearing any. That is going to bring us to our 10-year financial plan and 2021 budget update. I did invite Parks, Trails and Lakes Commissioner Terry Steenblock to join us for this discussion. She had some feedback items for us. Let's maybe start, Patrick. I know you've got a memo in the packet, and maybe let's start there. And Terry, thank you for joining us. Look forward to your feedback this evening.
Okay, you do have a memo in your packet, and it outlines a few adjustments to the budget before we get to the December meeting. I will go through those very quickly. We've looked at the revenue and expenditure proposals. We've looked them over and over again. One thing I still caution everybody is we have no idea what's going to happen with state funding next year. News today seems that revenue coming into the state is still fairly good. Basically, the sin taxes are supporting the revenue stream at the state right now, the liquor taxes and things like that. They're all doing very, very well. So it is anticipated that the December local share payment will probably be 100%. But that does not tell us that, so keep drinking, but that does not tell us what's going to happen next year. So it's a cautious that we go into next year's budget. We think it's a solid budget, but hopefully we won't have to adjust on the fly as we find out what's coming from St. Paul. We've made a couple of reduction requests or recommendations, and we'll go through these real quick. We are recommending the reduction in the Human Rights Commission. I won't read the line item out. As you recall, we budgeted $30,000 in the proposed budget, but the council took action to pay part of that in the 2020 budget year. So we will not need that, the rest, all of that the next year. So we can afford to take that line item and cut it in half from 30 to 15,000. I think that's a very easy and smart cut for us to make. We have reduced the recommendation of $10,000 in the senior center. That's for repair and maintenance. To be quite honest, that repair and maintenance line item was kind of a catch-all for senior center, propping up not only repair and maintenance, but operations and salaries and things like that. With the switch of some of the senior responsibilities to the city, particularly the finances and the banking and all of that, our finance staff will be doing that. If and when we hire a new senior coordinator, they will not have to have hours spent on paying for payroll or bills, or we won't have to have an outside accountant or an outside audit done. We will all make that a part of the city's operation. So we believe we can save $10,000 by doing some very simple switches of duties to current staff. The big one here is the reduction of $62,000 in contractual services. That line item is the weed harvester and weed control program for the lakes. This is a very first step. We're still analyzing what the relationship of the city and the watershed district and the lakes are. We need a little more information from the watershed district. We're waiting on them for a little more information. But this shifts the $62,000 in contractual service items, and it's basically supports the weed harvesting program. It's a contractual services item, and it shifts it to the surface water fund, because ultimately keeping the lakes clean has to do with surface water runoff and how it's going and where it's going. So I feel it's an appropriate place to shift these funds out of the general fund to a place where it's meant to be. I mean, I think that controlling phosphorus and controlling runoff and all of that is a surface water issue, and it should be reflected in the surface water. So that's a suggestion. We've also then, after some discussion the last few weeks, particularly when we had the joint session with the Parks, Trails and Lakes Commission, I agree that there has been really no funding mechanism for that group beyond the park dedication funds. I think in the long run, that's unsustainable and needs to change. If it doesn't, then we will be hobbling along with our park development or our new parks or replacing equipment. I'm suggesting a beginning levy amount of $50,000. This is similar to what we did last year to start the road maintenance capital improvement. We were starting to put that in, and hopefully we'll raise that on a $50,000 annual basis. Ultimately, that should get by the 2030, $450,000 if we keep the course. And I know budgets every year change and dynamics change and economics change, but if we were to keep that course, we could get up to $450,000 by the year 2030 support for this fund. Before I get to the 10-year plan, we'll talk a little bit more about where parks are and what they need to do, or what we need to do for the parks. All the union contracts, as you all know, are in place for 2021. I believe this is the last year for AFSCME and the 49ers, I believe, and for the management union. So we expect that somewhere in the late summer or fall, we'll be open negotiations for another contract renewal. And hopefully we can get another 3-year agreement and stabilize those contracts for a while. We ask that you approve the step increases for the assistant city clerk, the finance director, the assistant city administrator, and the administrator. This is the last step that these positions will have to go up. After that, they're topped out. They have no other final step after that. It would just be cost of living that is usually reflected and matches union contracts. So these are the last steps for those positions. 10-year plan. When we went over the 10-year plan, there was a request that how do we match this year's budget to the 10-year plan, and what does that mean, and what does that look like? So some very big areas.
Patrick,
bonding.
hold on,
Go ahead.
Patrick, hold on just a quick second. Councilmember Gerard, did you have something?
Yes, Patrick, thanks for covering the budget. When we're all done, before you get to the 10-year plan here, how do we look relative to the levy amount that we had put forward. I assume we're still under that. Are we bumping right up on it? Are we now under?
Yep, let me, with all those suggestions, let me get here if I can find it.
I didn't see a conclusion.
Yeah, I thought it was in there. It could
Yep,
not-
it's at the end of the memo.
Was it back? It was the end of the memo. That's
Yep.
correct.
Uh,
Trying to get my hands on it.
5.49%.
Yeah. Yeah, where is it?
Yeah.
All right.
No, I thought I put a chart in there, but I may not have. But yeah, if we do that, hold on, let me go here. Just
Is
had
that
that-
what we started with, 5.49?
No, we started with, let me I got a couple of screens going here, so hold on a minute.
I think we
You're
were.
right, Kathy, it is on the menu.
Let's see here. There it is. I'm sorry. We originally had, I think it was a 5.83% was the proposed budget. We are now at 5.49%. So we've reduced the requested levy by $37,000.
Thank you.
Before we jump into the discussion with the 10-year plan, I just want clarification. When we talk about reduce the 62,000 in contractual services, there isn't an actual reduction in the amount that is being spent. We're just moving it from the general fund to the surface water management fund, but the dollar amount is the same as what was originally planned. Is that right?
Right. The dollar amount is the same. There is no additional dollars for the lakes, which we'll cover in the 10-year plans right now. However, it does have an impact on a major impact on the levy as we're taking it out of the general fund. So the levy doesn't need to support that. That's where we are seeing the decrease mostly in the proposed general fund levy, but it has not changed.
And 62,000, is that consistent with what we did in 2020?
Yes, it's
So
exactly.
year over year, it's the same. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Other questions on the budget here before I go on to the 10-year plan?
I guess I'm curious as to, I mean, I know we saw a significant request from Forest Lake Association, and we've had a lot of discussions about that and how do we support, some of that at some level moving forward. And are we just on hold with that until we can really flesh out the watershed's role relative to the city, relative to Forest Lake Association, or?
Yeah, I would love to be able to fund the lakes where they need to be. I don't know how we afford to do that. Part of the reason we're shifting to the surface water is we may have the ability to fund it better in that fund. I'm also recommending that and you'll see it in the memo, that the lakes people, whoever they are, whether it's Comfort Forest Lake, whether it's Center Lake or whoever, come under the auspices of the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, and that the Parks, Lakes, and Trails Commission begin to formulate their budget and finish their budget deliberations in June of every year. We need more time to understand what they're asking for. Part of the problem is we get the Lakes Commission coming in and everybody come in, but it's in August, and with the deadline in September to set a levy, it doesn't give us time to figure out how to afford all this stuff, nor have discussions with the council. Those organizations need to come in a little bit sooner with those requests so we can try to figure out a solution. Also, yes, I need to figure out better what happens with the watershed districts. We've been working with them. They've given us some information. We need a little bit more information, but hopefully by this time next year, that'll all be in the past, and we'll figure out how that works. And that when Jerry or whoever comes to the Parks, Lakes, and Trails comes in June and makes a request, the Parks, Lakes, and Trails consider that and make a recommendation on how we should fund it and what the dollar amount we should fund. And then we'll see if we can afford it and how we put it in the budget. That's the problem I see, is that we just get these requests so late in the process that we just, with the levy have to be done in September. We just can't figure out a way to include them fast enough.
Okay.
So I appreciate the step back on making sure we understand and are coordinated with the watershed district and roles, because there's a lot of dollars moving between lake associations and watershed districts and city, and let's make sure that that's all clear and transparent. I appreciate that. Also appreciate the nature of the nature of the timing. What strikes me a little bit around timing is that it isn't a new request from the Lake Association. And I appreciate the move that we've made this year on untethering this from the general fund to some degree. However, in doing that, what I don't have a clear picture of is the elasticity of the surface water management fund. Like, so we just, I feel like took a rate increase on surface water for, $8. The recommendation from the 10-year plan was at least 10%, and we've doubled that. We've taken a 20% increase, but what would be helpful is we're evaluating this in the future is to know, if we up that another $4 to $5, what does that do for us as far as ability to fund all of the projects coming through that? And I appreciate that this is a significant change in funding structure, that we need to understand the impact of that surface water management fund. I don't want the Lake Association to get the message that this is, it's another year before Forest Lake is able to do anything further. I think we need to understand sources of revenue and all of the projects in that surface water fund before we can make those commitments. But I think that's something we've got to move fairly quickly on, because we have also committed to doing 2021 project funding with them, and I think they're going to expect that we're going to be working on that fairly soon. So I think it's a good next structure. It's a tough message for lakes. But I think this gives us some future flexibility that we all need, recognizing the nature of these projects, and also recognizing, there's multiple jurisdictions with oversight and funding sources, and I want us to get that straight before we are committed.
Well, and
beyond what we're committed today, I guess.
Yeah, and the other thing I'm looking for is truly, when we come to the council in 2021 and early August or whenever that may be, that we can tell you what the ask is and make a recommendation. We haven't been able really to do that. I mean, the lake associations have asked sometimes for a lot and sometimes for a little, but I agree that they need to be funded. There needs to be some work done on the lakes to keep our lakes healthy. It's just, how much is the council and the city ready to chip in and do that? And I think the only way to do that is for that request to be vetted through Parks, Trails, and Lakes in June, and then come to staff and council as a recommendation, or at least some kind of nut to crack, and see what how comfortable the city council is to fund that and at what level.
I just don't want to find myself here in November again next year having this same conversation. I mean, I feel like we've kind of kicked this can down the road for a couple of years. And I just love to be able to kind of sort through it and get it figured out once and for all. I look at the homes on the lakeshore of Forest Lake, and those folks pay some pretty significant taxes. Yes, they utilize the lake. We do have some, individuals from outside the community that come in and utilize the lake. I just think we have to figure out a way. And I'm not suggesting necessarily that everything on that laundry list that they want funded needs to be funded. But I really do think we need to support the health of the lake, whatever that means. So I just don't want to be sitting here a year from now having this conversation again, wondering what happened. So
I agree. And my only comment is that there's a lot of cans that are kicked down that road that we have trying to address, and this is just one of them. I think we can get to this and get this resolved by the next budget year, focusing on this kind of a structure, focusing on an early submission of requests. Similar, I mean, we do that internally with capital improvements, with equipment replacement. All the staff knows what they need. They put it in paper, and then we figure out how we're going to afford to do that. And we need to do the same thing with this organization, with these organizations, and any other kind of thing. So I'm hoping, I want this can to stop rolling down the hill by next year. And I think we can do it if we follow this kind of structure. And I know it's frustrating to wait another year before we commit to anything, but again, it's the same thing we've been struggling with all the other items we've tried to address in the past 2 years here. So
I appreciate also this coming to a body prior to council to be included. I guess I also recognize, and we've got Terry on the call today, we've got a lot on Parks, Lakes, and Trails plate as it relates to capital improvements and planning. This particular budget item, if it's going to go through surface water fund, that surface water fund ability to pay includes a lot of non-park things like pond maintenance. And that's not park pond maintenance, that's pond maintenance in the city, and culvert repairs. There's a heavy public works lift there that I'm not sure is a great fit with parks. And so I guess if Parks is able to take it on, fantastic, that's great. But I also recognize we've got a lot on your plate. And if that isn't a good home, I'm open to that feedback as well. And just balancing park dedication funds and also balancing surface water management funds might end up being a fairly big lift. And so I'm just,
I don't think we're asking him to be responsible for the surface water. Since it's a Parks, Trails, and Lakes committee, I thought Lakes would be here.
yeah,
They don't have to vet the entire surface water fund. They just have to vet the request from not only Forest Lake, but Center Lake and any other lake that's asking for requests, and tell us if they're valid, what they think, and how much they want funded. And then we can try to figure out a way to include them in the, with the rest of the projects in that fund.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in quick, kind of on the lakes component. With Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, I think it's just been about 4 or 5 years since we went from a park board to a Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission. I think that Lakes piece was, added on kind of at the end. And I know throughout the last few years, we've kind of tried to figure out what is the role for the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission as it relates to the lakes component, because there isn't any, funding or, how do we find our place with the watershed district and the lake association. So our focus has been on more recreational activities of the lake, but I do feel like we have the marina lease down at Lakeside Memorial Park, which that lease expires at the end of 2021 for reconsideration. Revenue comes in from that lease agreement is in a restricted cash account for lake improvements, but really what's that intent and how is that used? And then we do have situations like the Forest Lake Association talking to the Parks Commission on a new pier and things like that. So I kind of think, to Patrick's point, to figure out what that process might look like, I think some of it could funnel through, but yes, there is a lot of the lake quality and lake improvement pieces that really don't fall too much to us, but I think we could work through that in conjunction with Public Works. So I think there's things to still figure out, because I think that lakes piece was kind of added on, and it's obvious there's a huge recreational use of the lake. So figuring out how we fund that and work with these groups is still a question that I have as well.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to overburden the Parks, Lakes, and Trails, because I think they do a great job and have been very active and very successful and really have their head on right in the right direction. But yeah, I don't know when lakes got added to this. That was probably before, obviously it was before here, but if it says Parks, Lakes, and Parks, Trails, and Lakes, this is the place that lakes should land, in my opinion. Unless you want to change that structure.
I just am conscientious of sending more responsibility without an obvious source of funds. And we need to, the council needs to help with that. So I'm thrilled to have another set of eyes on it, and the insight and oversight from the Parks, Lakes and Trails. I just, I don't want it to be here's another nut to crack with no identified source of funding. So that said, though, I do think, you know, we have identified items on a project list that, you know, the pier, for example, and we've kind of, you know, agreed with the Lake Association that we would use 2021 as a planning year for that to take place. That can all happen virtually at no additional cost. We can keep things moving there. And I think we need to get our arms wrapped around the surface water fund and identify, we've taken a significant rate increase this year, and identify what's the right number for that fund. And so it's, I think we've got to just continue to show some forward progress.
Okay.
Other thoughts as it relates specifically to budget items before we talk further about the 10-year plan?
Just that I'm a huge fan of that placeholder for the $50,000 to have the park be able to do something. I mean, they've been running on a shoestring and it's going nowhere. And if there's one thing I hear from people who are considering moving here, is we don't have any parks. Well, we have a lot of parks. We just don't necessarily have developed and identified and anything that they can really go to easily. So I think this is a nice start that we can get some very positive traction for both the parks, lakes, and trails, and for the city itself.
Agreed.
Okay. If you're ready, we'll go on to the 10-year plan.
Please.
There, like I said earlier, there was a request on how this budget fits into the 10-year plan. And I just wanted to cover a few of those items, and one we've talked about basically already, but I'll go from the start. As far as bonding goes, the 10-year plan doesn't call for any new bonding until 2022. That's for street projects and things like that in 2022. If the council was ever interested in accelerating that to this year, we could consider a bond issue in 2021 and bring that forward. And the only reason I would suggest that is the rates are what they are. They're very inexpensive. They're very attractive. We'd have to figure out what that number would be and how much we'd be willing to bond for street or any other projects. We could structure that kind of a rate, or I should say a bond sale, to where it wouldn't hit the debt service levy until 2022. But for right now, the 10-year plan calls for no new debt in 2021. So if council wants to consider something different, we can, but right now we will just let that sit. It'd be a good exercise to look and see if we want to accelerate that and what that might do. But that's something we can consider early next year as we go along the 10-year plan. We talked right now a lot about the Parks, Lake Trails, and Lakes Committee. The 10-year plan was absent of a lot of substance as far as the parks goes. We said that to the council and to Parks Trails very early, that it was absent, and we were waiting for those projects to come forward and for them to go through their process and identify what that is. And we're hoping that we can get to that very soon in the early year. Once we get that kind of information, we can slot it into the 10-year plan, because the 10-year plan, that's only the first draft we saw. I mean, we're way far away from the saying, this is our 10-year document plan. It was only the first look that the council, the staff, and everybody else had at this plan. there's a long way to go into finalizing this type of plan and making it an action plan. The council needs to think about whether they're comfortable with the way, what was put in there, the amount of borrowing, the amount of tax increases, and et cetera, you know, and say, can we alter this? Can we change this? Can we stretch this out from 10 to 15 or 20 years? So there's still a ton of work to do here. And we need to include the Parks, Lakes, and Trails projects in this discussion. I think there possibly might need to be some more assistance given from the city staff or consultants to help Parks and Trails along this and developing it. I'd have to talk with Terry a little bit on that, but I am anxious to have all of this covered into the 10-year plan. One of the things I would never recommend to the council is that we only have a partial 10-year plan and we've missed something. Right now, we're missing the parks. Again, to reiterate, we knew that was going to happen after the first draft, but I expect that we'll have the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth discussion until probably this time next year to try to get this 10-year plan in place and everybody comfortable with it. So I hope that we can address that as it goes along. I mentioned earlier about Parks and Trails and Lakes to formulate their budgets in June, so we have an early look completed by June. So not only they have their operating budget, but their capital budget, because I'm sure, and as well as they should, they have a lot of needs and a lot of projects and a lot of things they want to do, and they should identify those so we can see them and try to figure out a way to put them in. So that's Parks, Trails, and Rec. Staffing wise for the 10-year plan, we do not see any additional staffing as far as the general fund for 2021. The 2021 budget does, however, include a new staff in the water fund to look at and probably transitions to an in-house billing system instead of one that we contract for. We have the software. When we purchase the software, we made sure we purchased that. We would like to try to get that done in 2021. We think it's will be more efficient for us to do it. We think also that we can offer our citizens a much more robust and better system where they can pay online and do direct billing and do all the things that everybody does. And then possibly move to either instead of a quarterly billing, make it like every other utility, either a monthly billing or a bi-monthly billing. I think that makes it easier on the pocketbook sometimes. I also think it gets the money in our bank account a little bit better and we can earn some more interest on it. So there's a position there. We did talk about the utilities. Again, Paul asked this question. We recommended a 15% increase in the 10-year plan. We had a 7% increase slated in the last water rate plan. The sewer, they recommended a 3% increase, and the schedule included a 6% increase for next year. And surface water, we talked about going to $12 a quarter, I believe it was. So what we're recommending is a 10% increase in the water rate, a 3% rate increase in the sewer, and a $2 increase in the quarterly amount for the surface water. That's really what goes in the 10-year plan. Again, I caution everybody with the 10-year plan. We only went through the first draft. It's a very raw document, some very startling numbers in there that we need to take into account and see if there's ways to maybe smooth those out a little bit. But at least we've gotten a start, and we know. The biggest thing I need to tell you is what the picture is. You need to know what the picture is, because I don't think to this date we really know what the picture is. And that's why I'm excited about getting the Parks and Trails and Lakes involved with this, so we can see what part of the picture that is as well. So we all know, here it is. Here's what we got to do. How do we get there? And, you know, and look for other ways to fund things, or how to afford to do all the things we think we need to do. And really, this 10-year plan probably morphs into a 20 or a 30-year plan in the long run anyways.
Patrick, I have a question about the staffing here.
Yeah.
At one point, we had discussed a kind of a grounds person in our 2021 budget?
Actually, you're correct. We did, and it's there.
Okay,
We have a grounds person. I must have missed that. We have a grounds person, also a new position in the general fund. What we've done there is swap contractual services
right,
for a new grounds person.
right.
We've given more duties to that. It's actually a zero game, or we actually probably will save, I think it was $15,000 or so by taking the contractual services of snow plowing and maintenance in the civic city hall and other things, and putting it on to a position in the general fund and get rid of the contractual services.
Okay, I just
Sorry,
wanted to be,
apologize for this.
I knew it was, the plan was for that to try to be budget neutral,
It is.
those contractual services, but I just wanted to be sure that we were still doing that, because I know if we're absorbing a lot of the work at Fenway and other places, we're going to need somebody dedicated to that work. So,
Yeah, and I think we presented that at the first budget meeting, and I just let it slip through I didn't catch it here. So yes, that's still there as well.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. So Terry Steenblock has joined us, and Terry, I wanted to give you an opportunity to chime in with thoughts on kind of the 10-year plan and next steps, specifically as it relates to parks, trails, and lakes, or anything else that's on your mind. I'm glad you're here. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to just join the meeting and share my thoughts as it relates to the 10-year plan. I would be remiss if I didn't start by thanking Mayor Bain for asking what areas were underrepresented during the 10-year financial plan, the workshop meeting. I also want to thank Ryan Goodman for his efforts to expand the trails through the work of the street projects with MnDOT and Washington County. I do believe without Ryan's work, we wouldn't have had the funds for the new trail expansions we've received or are projected to receive over the course of the next 5 years. I also recognize that the workshop meeting on the 10-year plan was the first of many to be meetings to be held, but I'm disappointed that there was nothing more than a $50,000 placeholder for parks infrastructure. And whether it's the first meeting or the 10th meeting, it sends a message when one area is underrepresented. And as such, I did request some time to be on the agenda tonight to be able to express my disappointment to all of you. As you all know, Parks, Trails, and Lakes held a joint workshop with council during the month of October to get your feedback and insight as to where we were headed strategically. As you may recall, there were numerous strategies outlined with an emphasis in repairing, replacing, and renewal of existing facilities, development of new parks and trails, investments in technology to facilitate transparency and self-service, new community recreational amenities and facilities, and community events and programs. And just like any other area of the city's work, these things will need a financial investment. And yes, I've heard Patrick say he wants a strategic plan from the Parks, Lakes, and Trails Commission, which would include a budget recommendation. And fleshing out every detail of the strategic plan is going to take some time. And while we work on that, I think that there was enough information to insert some financial placeholders for Parks, Trails, and Lakes into the budget presentation you received last week. And in my opinion, there's no excuse for excluding this work in the first look at a potential 10-year financial plan. As I think about the creation of a 10-year financial plan, to me, it requires a combination of known facts and educated estimates. And there was enough knowledge based on work that has either already been done or work that is projected to be done to incorporate some factual and educated estimates into this plan that you saw for the first time. Just as you projected 1.2 million in mowers and tractors, $550,000 for a vacuum truck, $2 million for plow trucks, and $19 million for a new public works and fire station, you could have included initial projections for some of the parks work you knew we wanted to accomplish, as outlined in the strategic planning workshop we had with you. And at the very least, you knew we had worked with Bolton and Menk and have a cost for the revamping and redesign of Belts Park that could have been included in here. You've heard heard us talk repeatedly about staffing and the need for succession planning and resources to implement strategies and projects. And just as a side note, as we talk about lakes, yes, lakes falls under parks, trails, and lakes. But if you're not going to fund it and invest in it, don't stick us with another thing that isn't going to get the financial backing and sourcing that it needs. That's my candid opinion on that piece. And I'm really hoping that the recommendation tonight to reduce the senior center line item of $10,000 truly isn't relying on the communication position or Jamie's role to supplement that work, because that wasn't on the radar when we initially identified staffing shortfalls and had requested funding for the communication sources. You had an opportunity to leverage costs associated with other trail expansions and utilizing Ryan's knowledge of costs associated with those completed trail developments to make an educated estimate within the plan. Finally, we have all kinds of historical and current costs for park revitalization that could have been added to the budget numbers. And if you were struggling in any way with potentially adding something as an educated estimate, I would have been more than happy to sit down and have a conversation and give you some projections that could be represented. Because as you've noted, this is the first crack at this plan. So our projections didn't need to be 100% accurate, just like I'm assuming they're not 100% accurate at this point for other areas. And honestly, it breaks my heart to hear we've taken on additional maintenance at Fenway, and so we're adding a groundskeeper there, but we're not recognizing the additional work that we've taken on in Fenway, with Fenway through other work that needs to occur there, and we're not recognizing any of the additional work that the city has taken on as a result of the senior center coordinator going away. I also have to say that I don't appreciate noting parks, lakes, and trails as a stepchild off to the side waiting to get in the door. And when we do, it's only going to make the budget look worse. There was an opportunity to appropriately represent parks, trails, and lakes in this proposal, and that opportunity was missed. And as a citizen of Forest Lake, I expect my council to have a full picture of the budget needs and for every department in the city to have equal representation as the council goes about making future budget decisions. Furthermore, as the chair for Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, I expect this commission to be appropriately and equally represented by the city manager at every budget meeting. And let me be clear, that does not mean I'm advocating for tax increases or any frivolous spending. I recognize that there is a strategic process that needs to occur as it relates to budgeting and financing. And I am simply asking for City Council to have a holistic and accurate picture of all city investments so that you can make fiscally responsible and sound budget decisions that align with strategic plan of the city. I think for too many years, we've talked about parks, trails, and lakes being important, yet we haven't dedicated appropriate general fund funding to it. We've relied on Clear Lake and Forest Lake Lake Association to provide funding on recreational projects. We've used street projects to rely on trail enhancements, and we've relied solely on park dedication fees to fund park improvements, which up until this year, a large portion of that had to go towards the repayment of Fenway Fields. So we are being encouraged to take land in lieu of park dedication funds, but when that's your only source of income, you can see why it makes it difficult to forgo those funds without a secured alternative funding source and something that's more than a hope or a dream of somebody. And I honestly feel like council members were exposed to a 10-year plan that did not fully integrate all areas of the city. And I sincerely hope that you do not begin to make decisions based off of an incomplete plan. In fact, why not focus on any 2021 budget adjustments that you need to do now and push the 10-year plan to later this summer for fiscal year 2022 implementation. I think this would allow for additional time to get a fully inclusive 10-year plan that could be aligned with the 2022 budget process, and it would incorporate the needs of all divisions for consideration as part of the long-term strategic budgeting conversations, so that City Council is not making decisions that don't show you the full picture. And with that, I know I'm pretty passionate about this, but I was disappointed that there wasn't greater representation. And we continuously hear how important parks, trails, and lakes are, but yet time and time again, it's not adequately represented. And I will close by saying I recognize that this is very difficult work. It's very hard work. And I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Terry, thank you for the candid feedback, and I appreciate your passion on this topic and leadership. So thank you for being here tonight. This is step one, as you mentioned, of a multiple step process. And so we do have ample opportunity to get it right. And I think we've got some work to do. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for allowing me to be here.
So to that end, I wonder if there's a more immediate opportunity to update what's in the 10-year plan with some of the items that we do know. We do know that there is, we've got the $50,000 placeholder, but there are some other items that are known. And with some more immediate urgency, for example, the Belts Park investment. And I think it'd be helpful for an update to be done sooner rather than later to pick up some of those items. Terry, I'm not going to say it as well as you did, but they are known or estimable. My language is failing me. And I wonder if we could turn that around sooner rather than later, not necessarily to inform decisions in December, but certainly to reflect as we're continuing to work on the 10-year plan. Something that has some of those items that, yes, they're pretty wild estimates at some level, but to Terry's point, I'm not sure it's some of those things are any more unknown or uncertain than, you know, a future public works building fire station. That also has a huge, you know, estimate around it, around timing and uncertainty. So thoughts on kind of getting some near-term updates done to help kind of inform what happened. My concern in not doing that sooner rather than later is every time this hits a revision, it does get another level of acceptance, or there's kind of a gut check that happens with each step. And if we don't incorporate this sooner rather than later, things just start to fall on the cutting room floor and don't get incorporated into the conversation. I don't know, feedback from council?
Yeah, Mayor Bain, I tend to agree. I recognize as well, and I think Terry articulated it very, very well, that there are some knowns, right? There are some knowns that certainly could be considered. One of my concerns is, you know, we had a sizable donation to the city by the Rotary, the Forest Lake Rotary, and we've not made any progress on that project at all. And I know that the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission has talked about a potential phase-in, for example, for that Belts project. So we wouldn't necessarily have to be all in with that project, but we could certainly show some progress in that area. And I know there are other areas where that could occur as well. So yeah, I'd really like to take another look at this. What do we know? You know, what do we know? Let's attach some dollars to it. And you know, just like I said with parks or with lakes, I don't want to be sitting here a year from now having this conversation again. You know, it's frustrating, and it's when we know that investments in this area emerged as part of our strategic plan, we've got to start taking a look at the cadence of implementation of those needs as part of that strategic plan. So that's just my 2 cents.
Kathy, I'll piggyback on your comment as I reflect on that. You know, we talk about, every time we have any of these conversations on long-term funding, we talk about not kicking the can down the road. And I think at some point we need to recognize either there's some very, very bold steps that are taken, or we need to decide which cans are going to get kicked down the road, because some of them are going to have to. And so I just want to make sure we've got a complete list, as complete as possible, and if there's known areas where there's some holes, I'm fine knowing that there's some, wild estimates behind some of those numbers, but I'd rather make some decisions based on wild estimates than to just have something sitting on the back of the shelf that isn't even considered. Because I think, again, the question isn't going to be, how do we do all of this? The question is, what do we prioritize first? And what does that mean around decisions in other areas? Especially when we're talking about some of these projects that, we're talking about projects that have, the projects themselves have a 3 to 5 year timeline, much less identifying sources of revenue and all of the things that has to happen to make those projects happen. So.
And I think we had this conversation when we boldly bonded to try to get ahead of some of our infrastructure needs, right? I mean,
right.
These are the messages, at least the messages the community has given me as a council member. I was pretty bold with my platform, and I think, we secured some good feedback, during our strategic planning process. And, I don't think there was a directive that we just, open the coffers and, start spending, but I think we do need to really take a look at this comprehensively and start laying it out. I mean, start saying, what is the cadence of all of this work that needs to be done? What do those investments look like? And that includes parks.
Councilmember Gerard.
I was reviewing Patrick's 23 pages of spreadsheets based on the budget meeting. And Patrick, there's a line item on culture and recreation, about $800,000. What's included? Is that parks?
Yeah, that's, I believe that's park. I think that's a placeholder that we tried to put in there. I have to look at, I don't have it in front of me, but I can get that to you. I believe we're adding staffing and other items to culture and recreation, so.
So part of it would be events we host, and part would be
Staffing, part of it would be hopefully some plans or construction or whatever the case may be. And I agree with everything the council said with, having to get started. And that's why we're doing the 10-year plan, is trying to figure out how we get started all this. Got to know it. I have to give you information that makes you give those decisions, whether it's Belts Park or whether it's a building or whether it's roads. Where's the priority? Or do we just, because I agree, parks have been probably the stepchild for a long time. I could tell that when I got here, but we need to change that, because your parks are going to go nowhere if we don't.
I think also this becomes part of a communication point around, of our general fund dollars, where do those go, and how are we spending our dollars? And what I don't want us to lose sight of is there are decisions that are being, much like we made the funding decision, previous council made the funding decision around how we were going to fund Fenway Field, and that would required half of all those park dedication funds going to pay off that balance. And that happened over, is it 10 years? It was a number of years that we spent, those dollars were spent in that direction. On a similar note, I think there, today, as we look at our where we sit today on general fund obligations, there is a healthy portion that goes to pay for the YMCA. And I say that not as a disagreement of that decision. I love that we have that asset, but let's be realistic that there are monies that are not available to us today in the levy because they are going to pay for that resource. And I think parks of any of our departments is what feels that pain. And so again, part of the investment in the community, or part of the communication to the community, is not that we're, because I've even been guilty of saying we spend no, general fund dollars on parks, or very few general fund dollars on parks. Kind of a true statement, but we do spend general fund dollars on this beautiful YMCA facility. And so I think we have to be careful in the overall communication, because yes, that decision doesn't help Parks, Lakes, and Trails on future investments, but it does speak to what's available to us as we look for, uses of general fund dollars, and also speaks to how decisions have future impact, and those are the opportunity costs, and we're kind of feeling some of that pain today, even though, again, I fully support the YMCA. I'm glad it's here, but that, as part of that overall communication on where do those general fund dollars go.
And
And I need to hold myself to that as well, because I also neglect to mention that, and it is an important community asset that we should be. People will forget that is, City of Forest Lake supported if we aren't actively talking about it. Go ahead, Terry.
Well said.
I agree that it is a nice asset for this community, but I can't use that asset unless I pay for a membership. I can use a park or anything else without having to pay for it. So I do think that, yes, you could argue some investment is going there, but it's not an investment that's made available to everyone in this community.
Absolutely agree. And my only point is that it is a obligation of general fund dollars that is an opportunity cost of other investments that we could be making. And so as we're talking about overall city facilities, it's that reminder of that's where those funds are going.
Yeah, and just to remind you that this council, one of its very first actions, I believe it was in early 2019, was to assist in paying off that lending of the park dedication fund. I think we cut it in half through using fund balance. So I think there is a commitment to parks. I think we just have to strengthen that and make it a constant one. But we did take some action to help that park dedication fund in early 2019.
Mara, I think you did. I think you said it right. Regardless, that's where the dollars are going, and so many of them, at least, and whether you consider it an asset or not. And so everybody's competing for those dollars, and but I'm glad we're having the conversation. We got to get it out there. So thanks.
But I guess question back to, Patrick, thoughts on, I know that kind of continuation of the 2021 plan, or the 10-year plan is on radar. Do you have enough feedback from council on what we might be looking for, next steps, or other points of conversation for us that would be helpful at this point? We've been also, I will say that 10-year plan is very comprehensive and covers many areas of the city. We've been very specific in the feedback tonight around parks. Is there other areas that you would like some more specific feedback on this time?
No, I think that I really think the feedback is going to come in the next few months when we decide where we put our money and where our mouth is. I think the immediate information we do need is, okay, if the parks want to have some early identified plans or projects, send them along formally, and we will give them to Ellers to include in the plan, and then keep working on what happens in the next 10 years, and we'll try to get those in as well. I know Belts Park is one of them, but I'm sure there's others as well. I mean, we have Fenway, the expansion of Fenway that's sitting out there, and a few other things. So if we have immediate needs that we want to immediately address within the next 6 months, tell us what those ones really are.
I would say maybe an opportunity for Terry, you and Patrick to take that offline, and Jamie as well. Jamie, I know you're here, and I don't mean to cut you out of this conversation. Kind of what those next steps are and some of that level of detail. I do recognize that the City of Forest Lake spent a lot of money 5-6 years ago on a comprehensive park plan, and it sits in a binder in Patrick's office, and it is as comprehensive as a plan could ever be. It just sits there because council, as soon as it was adopted, it almost immediately rejected it. And so I want to include those plans, but I don't want to
I don't want to go down that path again, and which is why these plans need to be tethered to reality. And so let's get those tethered into reality so that we're being realistic with ourselves and transparent. So.
And just to add on that, Mayor, that plan has been very useful in securing a lot of money for trail expansion that we've done in the last 5 years, you know, from how complex it is. You know, and just some history too, you know, you look at the sewer and your water and you're finally seeing where we're coming out of it. Not so long ago, remember those, that was all one fund, and we had strong development in the city. The city basically supplemented the users by development costs coming in. Somewhat what we've kind of done with parks. I don't know how many years ago we did do one large lump sum and did some park upgrades here and there, but then we went through several years of the discussion of trying to limit the number of parks, and then we kind of went stagnant, right? And then, you know, development then went stagnant, and then all of a sudden, then boom, a couple of developments came in, the Headwaters editions, 7 through 12. Then you got some money, and then it kind of went quiet again. You know, but here, you know, we got a lot of things floating around, and if we are going to start developing some priorities, such as if Bells Park is a priority, then we should also be talking at the same time as we did with all the trail developments related to our state aid funding, outdoor recreational grant that's due March 21st or 31st each year. You know, that project should move forward with an application submitted if that's going to happen, you know, not just asking for the money right up front, because we're making the story, right? We have all this stuff. It's something we would need to get over the hill to fund something that would serve a regional purpose, you know. So such as some of those other same grant that we've talked about, and how many times I've heard through how many different groups too with the docks on the lakes. We got all the partners talking about it. Why not funnel that into that grant application and get something moving? And all of a sudden you got a large portion of money, then the other discussions on the back end are a lot softer and easier to the public. If you look at the amount of trails we've done in the last 5 years in Forest Lake, you'd be surprised how much outside funding we brought to the table. I don't think people really realize how many dollars we encumbered through grants.
Ryan, thank you for mentioning that, because that's the other thing that this is going to force, is it's going to force the conversations on what are other alternative sources of revenue and how can we get creative and comprehensive in that approach, and what does that look like? And again, that need is going to be generated from looking at what that deficit is without those other sources of revenue. And that also is going to need time to put together.
And, you know, where things are right now, there's actually some great opportunity stirring up in the city right now with development that would be very favorable towards this parks and trails budget alone. So it's other things to think about too, but certainly when you can ever match those with funding opportunities or, you know, sponsorship opportunities and naming, you know, just, you know, a lot of communities do that too. So there's a array of things out there that you could bring to the table. It's just, we're coming out of that different conversation that was a long time ago where we were trying to reduce our park opportunities, and through several surveys and the comp plan, we're starting to see opposite of where that direction was going. So, you know, I know conversation sometimes goes a little one way or another, you know, we're all trying to work to the same thing, and there's just a lot of things that are, you know, starting to funnel now to the right way, just like sewer and water used to be one fund. We would double dip out of those just to pay for one thing for the other. And so, you know, we're coming out of that, put the plan together, but, you know, like how we came out of it with trails is, you know, we got a lot of money brought in.
I was just going to echo. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, correct me if I'm wrong, Jamie and Terry, but you've been pretty active in your grant writing, haven't you? I mean, in the past, maybe not something that large, a scope that large, but you have been. I mean, I know you're constantly looking for funding opportunities.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to chime in. We've kept our eye on, and I'm glad Ryan mentioned it, we've kept our eye on that outdoor recreation grant for this project for the last year or two. Really just up until the end of last year is when we finally were out of debt with the Fenway loan. And just recently in this year is, kind of when we've had a fund balance that we could do anything in the park with the park dedication funds. So our last Parks, Trails and Lakes Commission meeting, we're looking at doing the phase of building the picnic structure, pavilion, warming house, where we are gonna supplement that for safety and improvements with that outdoor recreation grant. So just really haven't had the funding to do it, but we are always keeping an eye out on what we can do to supplement dollars. And I agree with Ryan, there's definitely a transition in mindset from leadership and council, and hopefully we can just kind of move forward with planning for the future. And I'm grateful that this is, Parks is getting this conversation and a look for how do we, dedicate some dollars in addition to park dedication so we can be progressive and move forward. So I think it's a good conversation, and we'll continue to leverage other revenue opportunities. But I think for some of the big improvements like Belts Park and the expansion at Fenway and just some of our outdated equipment, those are some big capital projects that our park dedication fund won't, support. So, but yeah, I appreciate Ryan and all his trail developments, and we'll continue to seek revenue opportunities through grants.
We're definitely looking at revenue opportunities, not only through grants, but through sponsorships and programs like Ryan, you mentioned the DNR program. That's on our radar. We're aware of it. It's a matter of, prioritizing things as well. So definitely, I just want to be clear. I am not looking for 100% funding of parks through the general fund. It's going to come from multiple different sources, as we normally would. So yeah. Just to reinforce what Jamie said, we are always looking at grants and sponsorships and other opportunities.
Excellent. All right, this has been a robust conversation this evening, and I expect we will have many more before we are done. Before we move off of this agenda item, I would just ask if there's any other points of feedback or any other questions anyone would like to make. All right, I'll say, Terry, thank you again for being here, and thanks to Parks, Lakes and Trails for all of their hard work. Much appreciated.
Thank you for listening to me and letting me come.
Absolutely. All right, we are, and I've lost my agenda here. Bear with me for a second. We are going to move on to, we are at the end of our discussion items for this evening. We're going to move on to staff updates. Let's start with Patrick, and then we will move to Dan, if Dan is still here this evening.
Okay, just 3 quick items. We continue to monitor what's coming out of St. Paul's with COVID-19, seeing if there's any changes or things we have to alter in our operations. So far, we're doing okay. We've had a few of our employees that have been hospitalized once or twice, or not once, but a couple of them have been hospitalized. So we're going through that and being careful as we can. Like I said earlier, we are going to start the interview for that communications/recreational coordinator position in the next couple of weeks. So we're excited that will happen, and hopefully that'll help our communications, but also help our recreational outlook here. And finally, we went to the Plan Commission with the golf course building, and it was pretty obvious we need to do some revision there. We will try to do that and bring that back before the Plan Commission so they have something that they deem acceptable in the plan review. So we'll be working on that the next couple of weeks as well.
And to clarify, that was a tabled item, correct?
That tape was tabled, yes.
Okay. Any questions for Patrick this evening? Councilmember Gerard.
Patrick, I think it was a couple weeks ago you mentioned they might be looking at COVID testing up in Forest Lake. Any update? Yay or
Yes,
nay?
yeah, they're still looking for a place here. We offered them the senior center and we made some other suggestions. It was not big enough for them. It wouldn't function well. I know they've talked to the school district about possibilities of doing something there, but they're still looking for a site to get testing up this way, because that seems to be their last kind of void in the metro area. So if we can, be of help to them, I told them we would be, but the senior center wouldn't work, and we didn't have another space that we could offer them. That they needed at least 10,000 square feet.
right, Dan, and then we'll do Chief Peterson after Dan.
Mayor, members of council, just one quick update tonight. Just want to remind everybody that the draft municipal airport layout plan is on the city's website. So if you want to review that and if you have any feedback, you can submit that either to myself or Silas, who's the airport engineer. But just want to remind everybody that plan is posted and on the city's website at cityofforestlake.com/airport. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Dan this evening? All right, hearing none. Chief Peterson, and then we'll do Chief Newman.
Yeah, Mayor and City Council members, good evening. I have a couple items for you and our residents tonight. The first is in regards to the governor's new executive order that went into effect on Friday evening. The Forest Lake Police Department's stance is to continue educating and informing if we receive any complaints or concerns regarding to potential executive order violations. Believe it or not, with all the executive orders that have been approved and sunsetted or terminated over the last 9 months, some residents and business owners are still a little confused and need clarification of what each new executive order actually means to them. If you happen to receive a complaint or concern, please notify the police department via phone call or an email. Any and all complaints or concerns will be forwarded to the City Emergency Management Director, Greg Weiss, for follow-up. We want to ensure that we have consistency with any and all complaints or concerns for documentation and follow-up. Unfortunately, the executive orders can be somewhat vague and confusing to all of us. And so we need to take the time to thoroughly research them, follow up before any action may be taken by the police department, the county, or the state. And secondly, I was just informed a few minutes ago and received an email from the Forest Lake Rotary that their annual Turkey Trot 5K fundraiser on Thanksgiving morning at the City Center has been canceled due to the new executive order and restrictions on Rotary events. From what I have read, participants are able to be refunded and they can still pick up their t-shirts on Thanksgiving morning at the City Center. And that's all I have for you this evening, unless you have some questions for me.
Any questions for Chief Peterson tonight? Thank you, Chief. Let's go to Chief Newman and then Amanda, who is filling in for Peter this evening.
Hello, Mayor and Council. I just have one update for tonight. Due to COVID, we have canceled all in-person trainings until the first of the year. And then hopefully after the first year, we'll either go into Zoom meetings or do some sort of maybe a reduced number, multiple day training. That's all I have for updates, unless you have questions for me.
How are you doing? And I guess question for Chief Peterson as well. How are you doing as far as overall staffing from a public safety perspective?
Well, for fire, we've had 2 positive cases of COVID since the beginning of this, and we've had multiple personnel on quarantine. So we're actually faring pretty well at the fire department, but we've implemented a lot of social distancing, and we don't quite get the exposure that the PD does with the general public, which has helped.
Right. Chief Peterson, how are you doing on overall staffing?
Yeah, we're doing okay. You know, as first responders, all of us are, you know, right at the front lines there, and it's been difficult, a little stressful on staff. There's no doubt about that, and their families. We've had a few, probably, I'd say a third of our personnel that, you know, have had to be, well, actually probably more, like half of our personnel had to be quarantined, have been tested. We're taking some very extreme precautions. Kudos to Captain Weiss and Chief Newman for all the PPE and all the other things that we put into place at the City Center. And thank you also to City Administrator Patrick Casey and Assistant City Administrator Dan Undum for allowing us, and definitely to you, Mayor and City Council members. We have a lot of equipment and PPE in place that has definitely helped us. So big thank you.
It's great to hear. Any other questions for either of the chiefs this evening? All right, Amanda, and then we'll pick up Ryan after Amanda. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you, Your Honor, Counsel. I don't have any updates, but I am available for questions.
Any questions this evening? All right, hearing none. Ryan, and then Jamie after Ryan.
Mayor, City Council, I know a few of you guys been asking about the signal on Highway 97 Hornsby. It may have went red flashing tonight in preparation for activation of full signal operation after rush hour tomorrow morning. I don't know what the weather might bring tonight into the morning. Maybe that gets delayed, but we are anticipating the signal at Hornsby and Highway 97 to go live tomorrow. City staff in Washington County had a meeting today with Menards about potential driveway relocations, part of the County State Aid Highway 33 project. I think they went favorably. The county's going to prepare some cost estimates for Menards to review and move that forward. And just a reminder that Washington County will be at our January 18th City Council workshop. We're going to obviously talk about some concepts and get into some of that. And also some trail expansion along Broadway as well to tie into this. So there'll be a lot of things, pay attention to details. We don't have to obviously answer them that night, but if you do have questions coming out of that or even leading up to that meeting, please ask early and or after the presentation of what happens at the workshop, to ask shortly after too, so we can get things worked out as through after the holidays and starting into the spring. They're going to start wanting to get into more detailed design on projects so they can get the appropriate permits in place for the project and stuff like that. So just want to get you on your toes to get ready to ask questions, so we're not all of a sudden come April or May and it's an oops kind of thing, right? So that's really all I have. Obviously, you can see in the consent agenda, it's been very busy with site improvement work. The next agenda will have a lot of similar action items like that too. So a lot of busy things going on in the city. If you got any questions about anything, just ask me. That's all I got.
Thank you, Ryan. Any questions for Ryan this evening? All right, Jamie, and then Donovan after Jamie.
Mayor and Council, just as you heard earlier about the tree lighting for Forest Lake, we are not doing a traditional in-person ceremony as we would due to the current situation with COVID-19. The Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission and myself are working through some plans to deliver some virtual takeaway activities, things that people can do on their own time with social distancing. So we're looking to release some information about that next week. So we're looking forward to some plans in the near future. Other than that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions of Jamie? All right, thank you, Jamie. And
thank you,
Donovan and Sandy after Donovan.
Mayor, members of council, Pat did mention the review of the clubhouse at the last Plan Commission meeting. Also, I'm proud to announce that, as you know, that the Forest Lake mini storage has an expansion. I think it's 42 units. They're due to be built immediately, but another building, commercial expansion within the city. And also, I will second that. There are some exciting proposals coming forward with more residential growth, and so looking forward to that. And this is the time when it's best to do this, planning in the winter time so they can then begin construction, in 2021. With that, I'm happy to take any questions from the City Council.
Any questions of Donovan this evening? Seeing none, thank you, Donovan and Sandy. And Karen after Sandy.
Yes, the only update I have, I just want to mention the utility billing. I think most of you probably already know there's some late billings coming out for October, and you should be seeing, a lot of you should be seeing them at this point in time. We've had some glitches. Our utility billing company had some glitches in their system. Our staff has been working on them continually over these last few weeks, trying to get this resolved. It was a major process for them to get it resolved. So We're working very hard to get this system accurate and working again, and making sure that everything's accurate before the bills come out. So just wanted to give that update to let everybody know it's coming, and most of you probably will be seeing them already, but just wanted to let everybody know that. And with that, unless there's any more questions, that's all I have.
Sandy, do we give an extension of a deadline, or actually, so my recollect, I had just, so this bill is typically as of October 31, it's usually issued in the first couple of weeks of November. Do we give an extension since they're now being issued late, or what? How does that work?
Give extensions as far as
the due date.
Oh, is the due date as far as paying the bill?
Yeah.
I think you're talking about the late fee, if there's going to be one in the due date.
So we are waiving a late fee if there is.
Now that's the question, Sandy, if there's going to be a late fee or waive that.
Absolutely. I will, bring that to our staff's attention to make sure that there's no late fee with the extension. I'm sure there's something in place, but I'll just verify that to make sure.
Thank you. I had a couple of questions. Just residents had asked, and personally, I was able to look mine up online to see the amount. I haven't received the paper invoice yet, but if people want to see it and have an opportunity to pay online, mine was out there. I'm assuming others would be out there as well. And then it would, because those were issued late, as long as we are able to either move the due date or extend or waive any late fees, I think would be helpful.
Absolutely. I'll make sure that that's taking place. I'm assuming it is, but I'm going to make sure that that's taking place.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions for Sandy? All right, and Karen.
Thank you, Mayor. I have fun stuff right now. So we've gone through the election process, and then we get to the canvassing, which is what we had. I was flying emails back and forth with you guys all last week. We got through that canvassing process, which included a special meeting. And then after that follows a 7-day period of contest for anybody to come forward if they disagree with the election results. Nobody has come forward. Everything looks great. All documents have been turned in. And so the next step in the process is to provide the newly elected officials with a certificate of election that indicates you've received enough votes to take that seat and that you are duly declared to that elected office. So I just wanted to hold these up, and I'm going to show you. They are going to be sent to those elected council members, but I wanted to hold it up in front of the camera so everybody can see this one. It's probably backwards.
Oh, it's good.
Oh, this one's for Mayor Bain. I have one for Council Member Husnick. And I also have one for our future council member, Hannah Valento. I don't know if Hannah, if you can turn your camera on and wave so everybody can see you. I don't know if you're there, but we have one for Hannah as well. And so these will be available to the council members. I will be sending, probably have them at my desk or put them in your mailbox. You can come in and get them when you feel comfortable to come into the city office. And then Hannah, I can just keep yours on my desk whenever you feel comfortable to come in and pick that up from my desk. But that's some fun to end the meeting.
Excellent. Thank you. Any questions for Karen this evening? All right, seeing none, let's move on to council updates. We'll start with Councilmember Byström and then Councilmember Husnick.
The only thing I have, I attended a YMC board meeting last week. As I'm sure you all know, they are also closed down again based on the governor's order. They are going to work to re-up their senior wellness checks. They had some great success with that. I think they said, I was trying to find the number here and I couldn't quite find it, but I think it was over the course of the last several months, something in the area of 50,000 contacts with area seniors that are part of their membership list. And I did connect Derek after some conversations with him about, maybe there's some potential there to wrap our senior center members into those wellness checks. And if they have the capacity to do that, they would really be interested in doing that. They did also conduct a survey of their membership. Derek, as you know, and the Y in general, ever positive, did conduct a membership survey, and 85% of their members indicated they will return when they feel that it's safe to do so. So they look at that number really positively. And then just one last thing with them, the CEO is going to be conducting a mission update with board members tomorrow at 5 p.m. So I'm intending to attend that and can certainly report back if there's anything pertinent to the city. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Byström. Councilmember Husnick, and then Councilmember Gerard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. They had an emergency meeting with the school board last Thursday. For obvious reasons, they're trying to juggle what's going to happen now with students, and I wasn't able to attend all of it. So my suggestion is for everybody to go to their website and get all the different schedules and get that worked out, because they had a big job to do there, and it's kind of complicated, really. So anyways, other than that, get to their website and make sure you know what's going on there, especially if you have kids in school. So thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Husnick. Councilmember Gerard.
Thank you. I attended the Cable Commission meeting. You got that updated. Basically, it was a budget meeting, and that's all been approved. I also attended the watershed meeting last week. Couple of things. They've got the aquifer in Shields Lake. It's ready to go, so that's good. Second, they're going to be doing some work at the outlet of Forest Lake. So that'd be on North Shore there by the apartments on the first lake. A maintenance project strictly with the fish barrier and some outs. There will be no repairs of anything where the lake level will go up or down. They wanted to make sure that was made clear, and they will be sending something out and asking the city support to make sure people understand that we're not raising or lowering the lake level. And the rest of their meeting was pretty much spent on the 2021 budget also, and projects that they're going to do next year. I also attended the Planning Commission meeting last week, and both Patrick and Donovan gave you the update on that as far as the city. Also, it was nice though is that Chris Taylor, he is presented a concept plan for a number of homes just west of the Leela on Fenway there. So it would be west of there. Behind it, there's some houses now, and then there's a field behind there. So quite a big complex, I think, when it's all done. And when he finishes that little area, he'll head south on the other side of Headwaters Parkway. So that's all I have.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilmember Gerard. Just a couple of quick topics tonight, mostly on EDA, actually all on EDA. We did have a discussion tonight with the EDA. So we were in workshop session as part of the downtown committee group. We did designate the first part of the meeting to talk to them about the potential of funding 2021 business license relief through EDA fund balance, rather than taking that out of the general fund from the city. That those dollars are what was reflected in the budget update that Patrick gave tonight. As you know, we've talked about providing some relief to, in particular, liquor licenses for 2021. The EDA was very enthusiastic of their support of using EDA fund balance for that purpose, and actually challenged us to even look further at how we might also spend down some of that fund balance on providing some emergency relief. There was some discussion on perhaps that's some level of small grant program continuation, particularly for those businesses that didn't qualify under the provisions that were required by the CARES Act funding. And I think there's some appetite there for recognition that this is the rainy day, that this is why we have a rainy day fund in the fund balance, and let's make sure we're not keeping that too high at a time when there's a fair amount of need out there. So instruction was given to staff to draft some approvals for them to consider at that December 14th meeting. And I would expect that that would be, staff will present to them the funding of that, which we could then take into account for our budget meeting later on that evening. Again, recognizing that that funding relief would come out of EDA fund balance rather than the general fund. So, and then just a healthy discussion of next steps related to the downtown committee. Dan is going to be soliciting RFPs to engage a planner with a goal for planner presentations to go to that downtown committee group the 4th Monday in January, so that we are kicking off the year engaging with a planner. And that plan, Dan kind of outlined a timeline for that plan, has an initial project suggestions coming to us for us to consider by summer of 2021 to be included in the 2022 budget cycle. So there's some exciting stuff happening with that group. And we're having, I think we had about 25 people on the meeting today. So a good amount of participation as well. So much appreciated. That's all I have for updates this evening. Anything else to come before us tonight? Seeing none, I will wish everyone, first of all, be well and be safe. There's a lot of COVID out there. So hope everyone is staying safe and have a fantastic Thanksgiving. However, you might be celebrating Thanksgiving this year. We are having just a tiny little celebration without our kitchen. So, send us some good wishes for an adventurous Thanksgiving. So thank you, everybody. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. And Karen, could we have a roll call?
Councilmember Girard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick, Councilmember Beister.
Aye.
I got you, Sam.
I'll say aye again.
And Mayor Bain.
Aye. We're adjourned this evening. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Happy
Have a great night.
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.